Hello there, I'm Sideshow back with more over.gg coverage of DreamHack Winter. I've got another interview subject here, another victim for my interviews, and it's RaptorZ, the coach for Complexity, who have just been knocked out of the tournament. At the moment, to give you an idea of where we're at in terms of the timeline of the tournament, we've just come from watching the final, so that's the point at which I'm having this interview. So how are you doing in general with the team? How has the event been so far, just generally for you guys?
Honestly, we're pretty happy with all of it in the end. I mean, getting out of the group stage was definitely like the bottom minimum. We definitely wanted to get out of there, and our performances against NiP, given the circumstances, we were really happy with the way it went, and against Misfits as well. I mean, it was definitely a very hard series. They're a very strong team, and we had prepped a lot going in to play against NiP, and so the way we dealt with Misfits, I think we're happy with. Obviously, there's things we go back and change, but overall, I think we're definitely confident and happy with the way it went in the end. So.
Talking about preparation, you're obviously the coach for a team. Some teams don't have coaches at the moment. The ones that do seem to be having a fairly large impact. I'm thinking of like Taerong in Korea. Obviously, Rafflegator here and Fnatic have got into the finals with some really nice strategic play. You had kind of really interesting strategies when you were bringing it up. So give me a perspective on who you are and why you're interested in coaching and how you came to coach for Complexity. I was about to say Fnatic there.
I guess it goes back to, like, short version of it is that I've been playing competitive games for, I guess, a decade now. Not to any like major success, but I played a lot of first-person shooters a long time ago and a lot of Dota recently. And getting into Overwatch, I really like the combination of both the first-person shooter and MOBA elements. So I really caught on to it. I started doing casting and analyzing, and it's just, I enjoy breaking down games, figuring out why people do what they do, what's going to be the best, why is it the best, those kind of questions. And so mainly, I guess that's like the emphasis of my role is definitely helping with the analysis, helping with like scheduling, or not scheduling, but how we go about practice, what we're going to focus on in practice, that kind of stuff. But for me personally, I mean, coaching is just kind of like the same thing with doing analysis on a desk in a lot of ways. It's sitting down and breaking down the game, figuring out how things are going to work so I can give, well, if you're an analyst for a desk, giving the fans an edge to understand the game, or whether you're helping a team, it's going to be so you can give them that next step so they can be thinking ahead or just play a strategy better than another team.
Okay, how long have you been with Fnatic? Why do I keep saying that? How long have you been with Complexity? And what kind of, I know you talked about a bit about your roles, but how much impact do you have in the team? I know like coaches can range all the way from League of Legends, where they're deciding literally who's coming in and out of the team and controlling them in that sense, to a very loose kind of manager thing. Where do you fit on that scale?
I've been there for 2 months now. As far as that goes, I feel like I'm a little bit more in the middle, not towards like super over managerial side of that, like making a lot of decisions. I definitely help with strategy discussions. I help with whether or not heroes are going to be I guess when the debates come up, whether or not A or B is going to be better, trying to give an opinion so that there can be some resolution, because there is always an answer to every question. It's just about finding it, and I help with that. Map strategies with the map drafts, I definitely help a lot with that. I do a lot of the research for the teams as well. I'll go back through VODs, check all the comps, check positioning if it matters, and then also, of course, map ban strategies for the other teams, and just try to get all of that information so the players can focus on the game itself, and I can get them all that outside information. And then when it comes to being in practices and stuff like that, I will sit in comms. I'll help them, whether or not comms are good or bad, emphasize, good things, keep working on them. If something is getting quiet, try to remind them, keep pushing them, those kind of things. So just kind of being that voice in the background that keeps pushing them to say, we need to keep, focusing on getting better, not worrying about the mistakes too much. And I always talk about comms a lot, so definitely something I think is very important in this game.
How much of an impact do you think coaches are going to have, or how much do you think they have currently, and how much potential is there for coaches to have an impact in Overwatch, doing these kind of roles that you described?
I feel like right now it's going to be team dependent. If a team is going to use the time that strategy, like some teams aren't going to spend as much time breaking down, figuring out the game. Some teams are going to, I can't name one, of course, but some players prefer just to feel out the game and not really dig into it too much. But a lot of these, I'd say Overwatch is probably pretty important. There's a lot of data. There's not a lot of heroes right now, but as far as the way that things can be played out, different positions, even one composition can be completely different if a team plays a different position. So I feel like right now it definitely has an impact. As far as going into the future, it depends on how much Blizzard lets coaches. I definitely think in a world where coaches are allowed to be behind the teams, participate in calming, helping that way, I think it could be a huge boon to some teams, definitely something that could have a huge impact. But as it stands right now, I don't think it's a necessity, but it's definitely something that if a team is willing to work with the coach and a team is willing to definitely put in the time, it will help them a lot, because it's just a person who doesn't have to worry about playing and can spend all that time thinking about the players, thinking about the other teams, and just take a lot of that stress and a lot of that preparation basically off their backs and really let them focus in on the game.
In the last 2 months, in the time that you've been with Complexity, we really haven't seen much of them from an outside fan's perspective. So after they failed to qualify for the Overwatch Open, then I think the only real things that I can think of was like the qualifier for this. There might have been another online tournament.
There was 2 online events in between. We played in the Alienware, took second place in that to Cloud9, and we took the Carbon Masters, smaller event as well. Decided to participate in both of those, and the rest of the events, we made the decision not to because we were actually anticipating that there wasn't going to be a patch change coming into DreamHack. So we were planning on keeping most of our strats kind of in the book and trying to scare a lot of the teams with some new stuff, right? But unfortunately, it ended up changing 2 weeks before, so that's why we didn't end up participating. But a lot of it was we just wanted to grind down. We were doing 6 hours a day of actual playing and at least an hour, maybe even 2 sometimes, of VOD review, looking over other teams, us, comms, whatever it may be, to really focus on what we need to improve on for this.
When you're talking about hiding your strats or not directly showing them by participating in these smaller tournaments, how much do you think that's what teams will end up doing? Like not participating in the smaller events just to hide their strats? Or will things like patches or the fact that you have to test them in tournaments at some point to try and battle test them, how much weight do you put onto either side of the coin?
I think it depends on the duration of the patch, to be honest. Because if the patch is really short, or if the patch just came out, you're not going to be confident with your pocket strats. You're going to have so much time to scrim. You're going to have to put it in officials to really get that experience if it's going to work. Even if it's online, offline, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to know in the moment without, there's a different mentality in scrims. But if it's been out for a long time, I definitely think there becomes a point where if you're thinking of a new strat, because people are kind of getting developed into the meta, and you can have something that you can, play with a few scrim partners, and you're having good results with, and it should work against other teams, there is a benefit if the events are different enough. So a few $1,000 online events versus, $100,000 events, stuff like that, I definitely feel like as time goes on, we'll see that. And also in the long run, part of me also thinks that does benefit the scene, because of course you don't want to have all of the best 16 teams in the world playing in all the $5,000, $10,000 tournaments. So the rest of the teams can't get their share of trying to learn the game and participate and have the airtime. So,
talking about pocket strats coming into tournaments and the fact that the patch had kind of shaken things up, can you give some examples of things that you wanted to try in the previous patch that you weren't able to try at this event and would no longer be able to field?
One that we were actually putting a lot of time into, and some people thought we were trolling at Carbon Masters, but we actually put a fair bit of time into our Sim and Torb defense that we'd played there, because we honestly felt like a lot of the meta was this very slow, ult heavy. There was some cancer, but mostly just this tank meta still, but way more around the Mei. And we really felt like with Mei, Sim, and Torb, we could really just control the offense, right? Wall them off. We have the turret. We play around that. And if they're going to run like a monkey or something like that, Winston, we can easily just swap off the Symmetra to another support. So the whole core of it was this evolution of the Sim Torb with a Mei, where we have so much control to protect that. And we started ana-boosting the Torb, and we figured out that an ana-boosted Torb is something you can't really easily kill. Then you have the turret, so there was a lot of that, but again, it was one of those situations where, unfortunately, with Sombra coming out, it just changed everything, and of course the ult charge changed a lot as well. So, I mean, it definitely, we put a lot of clarify on the question. I feel like
Yeah, I was just saying, what were some things in the previous patch that you weren't able to do in this one?
So yeah, that mainly. I mean, that would be the most off thing I could say is pocket strat, something that we're doing differently than everyone else big time. And we're one of the first teams to bust it. I think one other team had done it, I can't recall because it's been a while, but there was one other, it was a Korean team actually during the Apex tournament that they posted that out. But outside of that, it was pretty much stock standard meta, so.
Coming into this tournament, You said that you had some pocket strats coming into it, and these were obviously to do with the new patch.
Yes.
We saw you running Sombra a lot. Talk was really excellent on it once you figured out what he was trying to achieve, because it looked really strange from the beginning, because he was throwing his translocator in, he would get behind, just kind of pepper people and then disappear. And we're like, what is he doing? But he's just farming his ultimate for the EMP. So what was your thought process going into that? How did you come up with that strat, and what were you hoping for it to achieve?
Honestly, we were sitting down one day and we were like, this was right before there was a PSA post on the subreddit, but health packs, what if Sombra gets ult from them? So we went and tested it in a game about a week and a half before, and we said, okay, she gets ult from this. Why can't we just get a 30-second ult with her and just start busting defense at the beginning? And our original inception of that is NiP likes to play super clustered. I mean, they play around Fraggy, they play around Himsy, and they play really well together. And they like to run a lot of Zarya. So the EMP early on makes Zarya really weak. Reinhardt can't do anything. Roadhog can't save himself, can't kill anything. So our whole thought was that, well, if we can just get this ult, we can grind that out really effectively and get every 30-second timing on that, then it can really catch teams off guard. So really the genesis of that was geared towards beating a team like NiP that's really about macro, close together play.
Your one opportunity to face NiP was kind of marred with a lot of technical difficulties. Did that set your team back on like a mental aspect? You were grinding out Hollywood for unknown amounts of time, and it must have been a bit stretching for the guys to keep focused the whole time, was it?
Honestly, there's no question in that respect, but I definitely think they handled it really well. Like, I think that they didn't really let it phase them that much. It was more of a situation where both teams were affected by it in the sense of momentum resets, and it's really hard when you're the team that gets the momentum reset to go back and do it. And so there were definitely some times where they came back and they absolutely played amazingly, doing 4-minute offenses on Hollywood, and then they'd come back and not have a good offense. Same thing for us. So it was really hard, but at the same time, I felt like they did a good job. The biggest part that probably affected us is that we definitely wanted to have that as a surprise strat against NiP. And the first time on Eichenwald, they were definitely way more caught off guard with it. And as the time went on, they definitely had time to think about it and adjust about it. And on the offline games, they had a much better approach to the strategy because they had time to think about it. So if anything, it wasn't really the resets during it. It was just the fact that, unfortunately, the whole strat kind of lost its luster as far as like being able to completely catch somebody off guard. It's still, we think, a very strong strat, but it's definitely something that when you're not expecting, it's going to do a lot of work.
When you come into the group stage, you were talking about not competing in previous events or limiting the amount that you were doing in order to kind of hide these strategies. Why did you bring them out in the group stage rather than the playoffs?
We honestly felt like taking NiP in the group stage just puts us in a good spot. I mean, most likely we'd be playing Fnatic or Misfits. We really felt like it'd be one of them too. LDLC was somebody that during the boot camp was definitely strong, and we thought that they could make it out of the groups, but getting first place in the groups just puts you in a slightly better position, and we had to beat NiP anyways. So if it doesn't work in the group stage, or if it didn't work in the group stage and we didn't try it and we got off into the playoffs and it didn't work and we lost 0-3, it'd be really awkward. So at the end of the day, the group stage is a point where we can try it, have a little bit of room for error, and if there's something we can develop to make it even better against them, it's definitely something we could do. And right after we busted it out against them, we did decide to start playing it against, obviously, Penta later on, because we just feel like it's a strong strat against this tank-heavy meta. But our goal was definitely to conceal it as long as possible and first play it against NiP and take them out in the group stage.
Okay. The team complexity really hasn't had much opportunity to play against European teams. The Overwatch Open saw them get upset by Method, I think it was, in the qualifier. Yep. And before that, they had only played against Rogue and then reunited at Gamescom and got beaten by both of them and then ended up knocking out Cloud9. So that was a European team that they ended up facing. So coming into this tournament, what did they think of the European competition? What were your boot camp experiences like? You said that you're playing with LDLC and you were reasonably impressed with how good they were, especially considering they're not like a top team within Europe. How do you think that matchup went?
The European scene is really strong. I definitely think both scenes are strong, but the European scene just seems to have a little bit more. The rest of the teams seem to, besides Misfits obviously, really respect the way NiP plays, it seems, and they really do grind out the way NiP plays. So when that strategy works really well and other teams are just grinding it out very consistently and not trying to change it up or anything like that, I feel like a lot like LDLC, a team that we thought might be, a big question mark, ended up being a lot stronger. Penta even, definitely not a team we expected to play as well as they did, and I definitely think it's, again, this benefit of having a very strong meta-driven team. It was definitely a big surprise how strong they were comparatively, I guess. in the sense of, oh, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about Penta and how strong they were compared to.
Yeah. I guess I'll just say that the boot camp experience was definitely like. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No.
Could you ask the question one more time?
I was talking about Penta and how strong they were, or I was talking about boot camps in general and how the European experience was coming into the boot camp, what you thought of the competition and things.
What I wanted to finish up with that is that I think that having the boot camp definitely led us to see the meta changes too a little bit more. The North American scene is definitely seeing what NiP is doing, but they're not playing it to the same extent because they're not playing against NiP. They don't get to see exactly how Fraggy plays because they don't have to deal with Fraggy. They don't have to deal with Himsy or Mafu. And the way that team plays is their core 3-stack in a lot of ways. So it was a very good experience, and it definitely opened our eyes up to how strong it really is. And I definitely say it was a really good experience, the boot camp. And definitely, I mean, I think future we'd definitely like to get longer boot camps. We had 2 days to practice here, really. So having a longer boot camp would definitely benefit, especially, like you say, it is a change in not only meta, but slightly different styles of play and positioning. NiP just plays the composition way more aggressive than any other team in North America right now. So,
your next event, I believe, is MLG Vegas that you'll be attending, which is stacked in terms of North American competition. It's got about the 8 best teams that North America has at the moment. I know there was a bit of controversy about inviting Europeans over or whatever, but we'll ignore that for the moment. How do you feel going into that event? Do you feel like this has been a good opportunity? Have you maybe unleashed some strats that now other people will be able to look at, like the Sombra thing? What's your opinion on MLG Vegas coming up?
I think we're honestly pretty confident about it. It's definitely going to be a really tough one in the sense of a lot of the strong NA teams are coming back. Envious is coming back. Energy is going to be coming back. There's a lot of teams that we just really haven't been able to play scrim. It'll be interesting to see how it goes with them. But we feel confident. At the end of the day, the NA meta is something we're a lot more comfortable with, the NA teams. I definitely think like part of the reason why Penta looked a lot stronger against us is they are a very strong team, but if we had practiced like we do against the other NA teams, we definitely would have had a little bit more read on how exactly they like to play, how much they play around Flippy, that kind of stuff. So I feel like we have a lot more confidence just because we're more comfortable with the scene, we're more comfortable with the opponents, and I think that as far as other teams reading into what we played here, there's definitely a lot of time in between now and then for us to go over the VODs, other teams, NiP, Misfits, Fnatic, and really look at what we want to change. So whether or not we'll be playing the exact same thing is going to be up in the air, and definitely we're going to be going back in the lab and figuring out what we can improve on. And I mean, if compositions need to change, they need to change. If they don't, they don't. But we're definitely going to be grinding it really hard to focus on improving from here and taking those changes to the North American side of the scene, not really worry about as much of a NiP in that respect. So.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to me, Raptors, and good luck at MLG Vegas and with the team coaching.
Well, thank you.